Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I hope everyone is ready for a brand new card challenge. The theme is to make slimline cards. They have been popular for quite a while, but I've only started making them in the last few months. So I thought this would be a great time if you wanted to try out a slimline card and see if you like it. I'm going to show you how I make my card bases. I have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of heavyweight cardstock. This is 120 pounds. I do have a link provided in the description box for the type of cardstock that I use for my card bases. I'm going to pull out my Tonic trimmer. This is the same one that you'll see in all my 6x6 videos. The main part of the trimmer is only 6 inches wide, but it does have an extendable bar that you can attach. That way you can cut papers up to 12 inches. So I'm going to cut the paper to 7 inches. So now I'll have one piece that's 7 by 8.5. And then the other piece is about 4 by 8.5. So generally I would just use that paper on the left for my slimline card base, and then this piece on the right has always been just left over. I've been using it for sentiments, but I decided in this video I'm going to make a card. So it's going to be a little bit smaller than a standard A2 size card. So it's about 4 by 4.25. I do own a manual creasing machine, but since I already have the settings for A2 size cards, I don't want to change that. So I pulled out my mini Scor-Buddy. I'm creasing this card base at 3.5 inches. And since it is the mini version, I can't go all the way down, so I just went about halfway with my bone folder to get that full crease. And then for that smaller 4 by 4.25 card base, I just folded it in half and used my bone folder. Now I have my 2 card bases all ready to go, and there won't be any wasted cardstock. I just want to show a few examples of some other slimline cards that I've made recently. A couple of them, these first 2, I used a sketch from Queen & Company. They do have a couple of slimline card sketches, which is really fun. And then for this third card, I used a slimline window die by Whimsy Stamps. That's a great one to use up some of those small pattern paper scraps. For this video, I'm using a couple of slimline dies by Kraftgali. So I have the Stitch Scallops 2-in-1 and also the square grid windows. And I'll have links to both of those in the description box. I also wanted to show what size envelope I use for the slimline cards. They fit in a standard business size 10 envelope. And I picked up this Kraft version on Amazon, and I think it's really nice. I like that Kraft look. And I'll also provide a link to that in the description box. For the pattern paper on my cards, I'm using some of the leftovers from the August Love from Lizi kit. So let's jump right into my first card. I've cut out all of the pieces for this scallop frame, and then also that grid window. I used both of those slimline dies from Kraftgali. I'm going to put some liquid adhesive along the outside of this frame, and then I'm attaching it to some white pearlescent paper. And I wanted to zoom in really close for this video, so I'm sorry if it goes off screen just a little bit since the slimline cards are quite long. And then I'm going to attach this panel onto the card base. One thing that's really fun about this scalloped die set is you can get 2 pieces with 1 die. So I used the largest die to get this scallop frame, and then also that inside piece. And then I used the smallest grid window die to cut out all of those little squares. So I did have to go and trim off a little bit on the right-hand side just because I could see some of my card base showing. Now I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back of this window piece. And now there'll be a little bit of the white border showing all around this grid piece. So I thought that looked really fun. And using the pearlescent paper, it'll have a little bit of a shimmer look. Now another thing I love about this grid window die is all of those squares are actually squares. So you can put any of these square pieces in any of the openings. It doesn't matter. I've used other cover-up dies where that is not the case, so you'll have to keep track of which piece you cut out of which area. So this is really nice, and it makes it super easy to just pop in all of those small paper scraps. I love using dies that have all of these little openings that you can use for those tiny leftover pattern paper scraps. It's also nice, and sometimes the pattern papers wouldn't necessarily go together perfectly on one card, but having that cardstock frame around all of those pattern papers really breaks up some of the busyness and helps all of those designs work together on one card. Next, I pulled out a few ephemera pieces that were left over from the Love from Lizi kit. So I have these leaves and then also the sentiment, and this is Because When You Stop and Look Around, This Life is Pretty Amazing by Dr. Seuss. I thought that was really fun. I'm going to pop up the sentiment using some thin foam dimension. I'll just adhere it to almost the center of my card. It's off to the left just a little bit more. And then for the leaves, I'm going to have a little thicker dimension, so I'm using my regular foam dimensional tape. Just make sure to cut or rip some of these pieces small enough to cover the whole back. And then I'll adhere it to the left side of the sentiment. I did have to pull off just a tiny corner of one of the foam pieces so that it could lay on top of this sentiment. Then I'm also going to use some of the puffy stickers that were included in the kit. I have this yellow bird, put that to the right side of the sentiment, and I'm also going to add this little sunshine right on top of that sentiment strip. I will add a small piece of foam tape to the lower portion of that sunshine. Since it's hanging off of the sentiment, I want to keep everything nice and level. I love all of the pretty colors in this paper collection. I had so much fun using it for my 10 card video for Love from Lizi. And now just a finishing touch, I'm using some of the sequins that are included in the kit. And there's a bunch of different colors of sequins, but I'm only going to use the pink ones. So I'll put some liquid adhesive down and then adhere the sequins. Put 2 of them in the upper left-hand corner and then 3 of them in the lower right-hand corner. I have seen so many amazing scene cards using the Slimline size, but since I'm more of a pattern paper person, dies like this are perfect for me. So there are my finished cards. I did make 2 using the same papers and design and then just some of the other ephemera pieces. So it's really nice to use up some more of that leftover kit. So now moving on to that smaller card, since we don't want to waste any of that card base. I'm using some bicycle pattern paper and I cut that out using a stitched rectangle die. Since this piece is too long for the card, I cut it about 2/3 of the way down and then removed about 1 inch. Now you're not going to see where I cut this paper, it's all going to be covered up. I'm just going to put some adhesive on the back and adhere it to my card, and I just used some solid cardstock for those layers. Now I'll adhere this other portion of the pattern paper, leaving just that little gap. I want to make sure to have about the same border around all of those pieces. I'll put my card front onto a card base, leaving just a little bit of the card base showing. And now I'm going to start working on the sentiment. I have the sentiment banner all cut out with a light pink paper, and I used a Cleaning Company die for this sentiment banner and also that rectangle die. I'm going to pop this up using some foam tape. I'll make sure to get good coverage so there isn't an area that sags at all. And now I can adhere it to my card, covering up where I cut that background paper in 2. For this sentiment, I'm using the word hello. This is a die from Cleaning Company's Hello Sentiment Stacker Set. I love this font and I always enjoy having general sentiments. So I cut out the outline using that same background pink paper, and then I used some glitter cardstock for the word hello. Just adhere those together using some liquid adhesive, and then I'll attach it to the front of my card. And now for some finishing touches, I'm adding a couple small banners in the upper left-hand corner. I cut one out of the same light pink cardstock and then the other out of that darker pink cardstock. I'll add just a small scrap of cardstock underneath the top portion of the banners where it goes off of that pattern paper. Just trying to keep everything nice and level. I'll just overlap this second pink banner just for a little extra interest. And then to finish off the card, I'm using some Love from Lizi mini star peel-offs. This is the silver mirror color. Just going to put a few of them around the sentiment, and there is the finished card. And I also made two using this same design since I had enough of that bicycle paper left over. So here are the 4 cards I made. The first 2 are the Slimline cards, and if I didn't mention it before, the finished size is 3.5 by 8.5 inches. And then the other 2 cards are using the leftover cardstock from cutting those Slimline card bases. That way I have 0 waste. And it was fun to challenge myself to use up the rest of that cardstock. It's also nice that those smaller cards still fit in an A2 size envelope. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but it still works just fine. If you'd like to play along with my card challenge, you can head over to my Instagram or my Facebook page. I have links provided in the description box. If you share on Instagram, be sure to use the hashtag kristiescardchallenge. As always, there is no time frame, just play along when you have a chance. And be sure to check out everybody else's entries and leave them some love as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.